Hello, hello. Welcome to the Energies of the Week. I'm Bronwyn. I'm a predictive astrologer with a passion for myth and story, and especially for the stories of our lives. Today is Tuesday, June 14th. I'm bringing you the astrological energies of the week for this week, June 14th, 2022. We are starting the week under a Sagittarius full moon, and the energies awakened by this moon will carry through the week and give us our developmental task for the week. So I'm here to help you navigate the energies of this week for the best possible outcomes. So the coming week is a relatively quiet one in terms of the big dynamic transits. However, it's a very powerful week in terms of our lunar beings, in terms of our psychological, emotional development and growth. And it all starts with the energy of this full moon in Sagittarius. So every full moon is a moment of illumination and a call for the synthesis of energies. When we have a full moon, we have the sun in one sign, and of course, the moon is opposite her in the sign across from the zodiac, from the sign that the sun is in. So they're creating an opposition with two signs that are across from each other. Every opposition asks us to synthesize two different approaches to the same theme. So this week, we are working with the theme of faith and wisdom. That is the theme of the Sagittarius-Gemini axis. If we think about Gemini energy, that's where the sun is right now. Gemini finds safety in the gathering of information. Gemini is the brilliant mind and the great researcher. If you have a Gemini in your life, you know it's all tabs open, all the books open on the floor. We are information gatherers. And we're brilliant at making connections and finding answers. We are, along with the Scorpios, we are the researchers of the zodiac. Across the way from Gemini is another mutable sign, Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is also all about wisdom, but for a Sagittarius, it's not so much about having all of the tabs open. In fact, it's kind of about shutting the computer and losing oneself in prayer. So the Sagittarian approach to wisdom has to do with a big vision. It has to do with optimism and faith. So of course, both of these energies are so important for building a really mature wisdom in our lives. We need to be discerning information gatherers, and we need to know when to surrender into faith and into something bigger than ourselves. So when we're sitting on a full moon on this axis, we're asked to synthesize those two energies within ourselves. We're asked to think about the balance of faith and discernment in our own lives. Where have we leaned a little bit too much into the Gemini, into the rational, into the information gathering? Or where have we leaned a little bit too much into the surrender, into the faith without knowledge? We want to bring faith together with gathered knowledge, and the two create wisdom. That's the brilliance of the Sag-Gemini axis, and that's what the Sagittarius new full moon every year asks us to do. So those are the issues and themes that are being illuminated in our lives right now. Questions of faith, questions of surrender, questions of information and the rational, and how do we balance the two? The particulars of this moon are really heightening this idea of combining the practical with our faith and surrender. And that is because this moon is squaring Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces right now. Neptune, of course, is that archetype in which we can lose ourselves, the place where we dream our biggest dreams, the place where we go to find God or the divine, however you define spirit. I'll say it again, Neptune is where we lose ourselves for good or ill. So Neptunian energy is very wordless. It calls upon that part of us that transcends words. In a sense, there's an affinity with Sagittarian energy because Neptune asks, what do we have faith in? What are we willing to surrender to? So Sun Moon are both squaring Neptune. So our aspirational self and our feeling heart under this full moon are in deep dynamic conversation with that dreamiest of dreamy places where we find the divine and where we dream our biggest dreams. There's another really important ingredient in this recipe, though, and that is Saturn, because Saturn is also having potent conversations with both the sun and the moon. So we have a really interesting combination of energies under this full moon. We've got the faith wisdom conversation, faith knowledge conversation between Sagittarius and Gemini. We've got both sun and moon talking to Neptune and stretching us into the miraculous, into believing the unbelievable. And then, thank goodness, we have this stabilizing reality of Saturn coming into the mix and saying, you're pushing the edges of what's possible. You're surrendering in faith. You're gathering knowledge in order to be able to create the dreamiest of dreams in your life. But what are you going to do to make it real? So we have the call of the impossible dream, but also the call of structure, reality, and true manifestation, which is about the hard work and acknowledgement of reality that it takes to make a dream real. So it's this beautiful opening of possibility for us, practical possibilities combining with the greatest reach of what we believe is possible for ourselves. So I think our developmental work this week has to do with believing that impossible dream in ourselves, but also seeing what we need to do to make it real. So I think the most exciting possibility for your use of this energy is that you will be inspired to push the edges of what you believe is possible for your life. And at the same time, you will have access to the practical information and the practical structures that you need to get that dream a little bit closer to your ideal. It's a really interesting opening and combination of energies. Saturn, Neptune actually working together to help you to build towards your dream. And your job is to, what is that about believing 5 impossible things before breakfast? Yes, doing that. And then being really clear-eyed about the practical work and structures that it's going to take to make those impossible things possible and real. And I expect that there will be information that comes in, that there will be feelings that come up, that things will happen to you this week that will make you believe, oh my goodness, I think I am one step closer to reaching that most extraordinary of dreams. That big reach for me is just a little bit closer. So when we bring this energy down into our real lives, I think that's how it will land in our lives. At its best possible manifestation, it will feel like, you know what, possibility just opened up for me a little bit more. If I balance my information gathering with my faith and surrender, if I balance my allowing myself to dream the impossible with my practical structures that invite the possibility, then we're really just hitting the right note and we're inviting the planets to collaborate with us in just the way that they want to this week. So some other transits that are going to play into this, we have on Wednesday, we have Mars, our action-taking vital forces, meeting up with Chiron, which is the place where we carry our core wounds, but also our greatest potential for healing. And I think the way this plays into the full moon energy that we're experiencing this week is it's activating our vulnerability. And as Brené Brown teaches us, our vulnerability actually can be one of our greatest assets, both relationally and in dreaming the big dreams for ourselves. So I think the call on Wednesday is to have the courage to face our vulnerabilities and to see how being a little more open to them, at least within ourselves, not necessarily with others, but at least within ourselves, openly acknowledging our vulnerability will help us to see what's possible. So that's going to play out differently for each of us. But I would expect something to come along on Wednesday that reminds you of the power of vulnerability, or perhaps reminds you of the healing that still needs to take place in order for you to really live into your dreams. Then on Thursday, we have the sun having powerful conversations with those two big players in the full moon, Saturn and Neptune. So I see this as an opportunity for us to align our aspirational sense and our sense of purpose with those things that we realized on a more emotional level under the full moon on Tuesday. And then finally on Saturday, we have Venus in conversation with those two archetypes that we're working with this week, Saturn and Neptune. So first Mars Chiron, and then the sun talking to Saturn Neptune, and then Venus talking to Saturn Neptune. There's a really nice narrative arc to this where the emotions and the realization come on Tuesday with the full moon. And as the week goes on, we are able to pull our aspirational self into that with the sun illuminating. And finally, our values with Venus and thinking about how can we create this dream realistically in alignment with our values. Those will be the questions we'll be asking ourselves over the weekend as Venus converses with Saturn and Neptune. The other big piece this week is Mercury's going through some changes. So Mercury on Tuesday moves into Gemini, his home. He's done with the retrograde and has moved back to the beginning of Gemini. So we'll all be thinking a little bit more clearly and communicating a little bit more clearly. This is great news. And then towards the end of the week, Mercury finally comes out of his retrograde shadow. So we're done with that magical time of review and synchronicities and sideways motion that we are allowed during those magical retrograde periods, which we'll miss working the magic with Mercury, but other things will be able to move forward with much more clarity. So all in all, I think it adds up to a really nicely balanced week if we embrace that emotional and psychological challenge at the beginning of the week of the full moon and acknowledging the reach of our dreams and considering the practical steps that are necessary to make those dreams a reality. So have a beautiful week. Maybe you can hear my little friend Pearl running around under my feet. She's a pug and she will be here on my recordings sometimes. If you hear something in the background, it's probably Pearl. Have a beautiful week. Happy full moon. I will see you next week and we'll be talking about the choice point of the last quarter moon.